4, follow traffic, clear visual approach, runway 4 right, maintain 17, John Austin, 5 mile final. 17 till 5 out.
Recognizing important yet often unheralded members of our nation's aviation history, as well as its future. From the National Business Aviation Association, this is Flight Plan. I'm Rob Finfrock. November is Native American Heritage Month, a time to pause and reflect on the history, culture, and contributions of Native Americans to our country. Those contributions extend to aviation, including Bessie Coleman, the first Native American to earn a pilot's license, and Major General Clarence Tinker, a member of the Osage Nation who was the highest-ranking Native American in the U.S. Army during World War II. And there are hundreds, if not thousands more, including my guests today, who are all members of the business aviation community.
My Choctaw dad attended Spartan Flight School in Tulsa for a while, and then my grandfather flew P-40 Warhawks during World War II.
Melissa Felix is office manager at the aviation tax consultant firm of Houck & Christensen CPAs, and as she noted, a proud member of the Choctaw Nation.
Even with these role models, though, I never could really envision myself in such an aviation career. And I think that goes to the challenge of, not seeing women in these roles and, not as many Native Americans in aviation roles. But I did overcome this barrier when I joined a local nonprofit women's sports league here in Oklahoma City. And those relationships I formed with teammates led me to my first role in aviation at a title company. So all of the aircraft title companies are located in Oklahoma City because the FAA is located here. I do think it's very interesting that I've got this very solid history in my family involving aviation, and I never actually gunned for such a role, but then I did fall into it through other life endeavors.
Also joining me today is Kevin Alice, a member of the Forest County Potawatomi community and president of Thunderbird Strategic LLC, who previously served as CEO of the National Congress of American Indians.
It's been 38 years ago when I got my private pilot's license and it's been a passion of mine forever. And when I took a leadership role at NCAI, I did get a taste of what it would be like to work harder to try to connect Indian country to the aviation industry. And over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, that's kind of where one of my focuses has been, along with running my own government relations business, but still strictly working with tribes and tribal associations.
My third guest is Tressa Mattingly, NBAA Senior Social Media Manager and a member of the Chickasaw Nation.
My dad worked at the Federal Aviation Administration, and just being born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area my entire life, I was always exposed to being Chickasaw, what that meant. We would often go out to Ada, Oklahoma, where the tribal nation is located. And I just grew up learning so much about Native American history just through my dad, who is a Chickasaw elder and a Vietnam veteran. And his love of aviation. My great uncle Buddy was actually one of the very first Chickasaws to land on the beaches on D-Day. He was a paratrooper. So aviation does run strong in my family. While none of us were actual pilots, we were fortunate to get involved in aviation in one way or another.
Do you feel your identity as Chickasaw influences your work in aviation, Tressa, or perhaps how you perceive your place in the industry?
It absolutely does. I feel very fortunate to have been born and raised a Chickasaw. One of the Native Americans in Congress, Representative Tom Cole, I've followed a lot of his work and what he's done for the Chickasaw Nation and the state of Oklahoma. So I've just been very fortunate living in the Washington, D.C. area, growing up around a lot of politicos and a family that was, politically oriented and interested in things like that. Aviation and all of that just kind of tied together.
Yes, with my Choctaw identity, there's quite a bit of responsibility to preserve our language and customs. And with these mindsets, it has influenced me to provide utmost integrity on anything I work on, And it's given me this perspective to appreciate and preserve advancements while also continuing to innovate. So there's just this responsibility to always be paving a better way. And this is why I go to DC with the NBAA Young Professionals and advocate for sustainability. And so that was definitely a cultural influence on my aviation work.
My mother grew up on a reservation. My grandfather and great-grandfather were both chairmen of our tribes and leaders of our tribes through very different times and difficult times. And it kind of groomed me over time once I became an attorney and government relations professional in D.C. to work particularly and exclusively in Indian country. And that led me to be the CEO of the NCAI. But I've always been a pilot, always been an aviation geek, always have loved everything about the aviation industry. And now that I know what it takes to run large organizations and very complicated advocacy strategies and trying to introduce aviation in a bigger way to Indian country, both in the relationships and also understanding the challenges and nuances that exist that make it difficult for more tribes and more American Indians across the country to be involved in this business, whether it be through piloting, maintenance, air traffic control, FBO operators, line operators, whatever it is.
Tressa, how can we help build pathways between Native American communities and the aviation industry?
I think this is a great first step. This is the first Native American podcast that we've done at NBAA. I think it's wonderful that we're promoting Native American Heritage Month this month in November. We've done member profiles with the Choctaw Nation. We're really doing our best to get out there and let people know that, we're here. First Americans have been here, are still here. We might be a smaller group within business aviation and the industry as a whole. But, the Chickasaw Nation, for example, they are proud members of NBAA. There is a small Chickasaw Nation flight department. We have the Choctaw Nation who are members, and there are several others as well. Not only that, but at NBAA base, for example, we have a great group known as Native Americans in Aviation. They have a great Facebook group. They're small but mighty, and they showed up exhibiting and being present. I think it's important to talk about what we're doing, where we're going. Melissa had mentioned the YoPro Capitol Hill fly-in. That's something that we're going to continue to do and scale every year. And I know that Melissa and myself want to brainstorm and think of more ways to bring more Native Americans within business aviation. We know they're there. It's a call to them, reach out to us. We want to get to know you. We would love to take this to the next step and get as many people involved as we can. We had a great group of people who did meet with Tom Cole's staffer at the recent YoPro fly-in that all had Native American heritage. So it's really incredible to get those voices out there. And, another way is to share our history, be proud of it. John Harrington is the first Chickasaw Nation in space. Pearl Carter Scott, she was the youngest Native American at the age of 12 to get her solo pilot's license. There is a great avenue of history that we just need to share and be proud of.
Exposure is a major concern. And I think within the NBAA YoPro level, we could almost have someone be a liaison between getting the information out to the different tribes. And I assume the other tribes, like the Choctaw Nation, they have yearly cultural gatherings probably across multiple cities. Choctaw Nation does this every year. And Choctaw Nation also has its own career fairs as well. So what I could see is someone essentially being a bit of a liaison, plugging the information about the aviation roles, the firms, the opportunities, and making sure this is exposed at the cultural gatherings, at the career fairs that are actually put on by the different nations. I think that would be a huge step, with making sure there's a specific connection, and not only the connection, but it's systemic and it happens often.
We're going to really need champions from within that have been there for a little while to help make this happen. I will also note that the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, the first Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs over Department of Transportation, is American Indian. It's Orlando Teller, a Navajo Nation. has a graduate of Emory-Riddle, has been involved in aviation and in politics for a long time. So, we're going to need guys like that when they get out of the administration to get out there and help get industry leaders, whether they be schools, whether they be organizations, to work on aviation education and training program across the board, create STEM programs and aviation pathways to increase scholarship and internship programs that are available. And also, like my friends that are online, the tribes in Oklahoma especially that have very advanced, sophisticated aviation departments and operations to promote, what was that process? What were the steps that your tribe took in propping up an aviation business, whether it be purchasing land that includes an airport, whether it be building an airport, or whether having an airport on the reservation and building out all the infrastructure and businesses that happen, on an airfield. And how does the tribe get all it can out of that resource from not only business and economic development, but also developing a talented workforce and creating professionals that will be also influential in recruiting people later. So there's a lot of things that folks could do, but it's really going to have to be grassroots, boots on the ground, led by folks that have fought the fight already and been able to get a working aviation business and department for a tribe up and running and working and making things happen.
I think you make an excellent point there. So recently, Choctaw Nation broke ground on building a new aviation tech center on tribal land. There's a lot that goes into that. Where do the funds come from? Yeah, what was the project management steps taken to make that day arrive? So yeah, I think the sharing of the process and the accomplishments that we have done here in Oklahoma would be huge for that to be shared with other tribes across the nation.
Yeah, that's awesome, because my tribe specifically, we're looking in Crandon, Wisconsin, where our reservation is. Adjacent to our tribal boundaries is an airport that the town of Crandon wants the tribe to buy. Okay, wondering if they'll do it. And so we're in these conversations about whether or not it's something that will work for us or not. So, it's important to know that and it's not only our tribe, but many tribes to know that there are other communities within Indian country that want to share that information, that want to talk about, what kinds of things do you need to prepare for if you want to walk down this road? Because, again, it's a mystery business and mystery industry for most of Indian country.
Tressa, what about the role of mentorship in nurturing these connections and to really highlight the see it, be it aspect that's so important?
Definitely, at NBAA, we have an incredible mentorship program, and that is a wonderful idea that other Native Americans can volunteer to take on that opportunity to mentor a YoPro or someone just coming into the field, or maybe someone who is interested in doing it. I always do my best to share my love of aviation, share my passion for the Chickasaw Nation, and really teach that history like my dad did, because for me personally, that is the number one way that I will continue that legacy.
The mentorship thing's important, right? If you have Native pilots, if you have Native air traffic controllers, if you have Native AMPs, and all these that can, talk to young people and introduce them, take them. Just the plane doesn't even have to leave the ground. Just walk through the plane, look at the cockpit, and look at the ground operations, and being able to get excited about that is great. So we need to find people that are in the business, that are Native, that can touch somebody else's life to do that. Always be looking out for scholarships and internship programs, including FAA and tribal organizations that might have it, and learn about what contributions to aviation tribes are currently making right now, and start thinking about what role you would play in that particular journey.
And Melissa, as you mentioned, Native Americans are playing an important role not only in today's aviation industry, but also its future.
So I had mentioned the new Emerging Aviation Tech Center that they are building, and this is going to be a site for testing crewed and uncrewed aerial systems. And then the second one that Choctaw Nation is doing, like Chickasaw, have partnered with the FAA to fly drones as a public aircraft operator. And so that's helping with the flexibility on putting together those aircraft regulations. Those are the two main ones that I know of as of recent. And with those places, being built here in Oklahoma, that's just all that much more exposure for younger Native Americans to find out about STEM. I know a lot of Native Americans financially, that is a burden to getting into the industry. So yes, like Kevin said, scholarships are huge. That information should be spread like wildfire among everyone, and they should all be applying for scholarships. The funds are out there, and even scholarships that are not solely provided by the tribes themselves. It's out there.
There are a lot of resources out there as well, including the Native Americans in Aviation group page that Tressa mentioned. They're on Facebook and also have a website at nativeamericansinaviation.com. Be sure to also check out NBAA's extensive resources to help young people of all backgrounds find their place in business aviation. Those include nbaa.org/careers, nbaa.org/YoPro, and nbaa.org/mentorship. And that's the latest from the National Business Aviation Association. Be sure to subscribe to Flight Plan on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. You can also ask your virtual assistant or connected device for the latest episode of Flight Plan, or download it directly from nbaa.org. I'm Rob Finfrock. Thanks for listening, and join us next time for a new episode of Flight Plan.
Right base, sending out 3500.
All right, we got him inside. We're still on 170, cover 5.